Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good. I had the pleasure over the weekend of listening to a podcast that really just kind of got me ensconced in this really, truly incredible story. We are speaking to an award-winning investigative reporter, journalist, author of 4 books, 6 narrative podcasts. The list goes on and on. He's currently topping the U.S. charts. The podcast is called Guru Don't Cross Cat. And we're going to get into the story of this, but I would like to give a warm welcome to Chico Felitti. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Such a pleasure to be here to talk about Don't Cross Cat.
So for people that aren't aware of this story or of Cat, can you go into who this person is? Just a tease to the audience. She's currently serving, I believe, 8 years behind bars right now. But to what is this story about to you?
I think Don't Cross Cat is a cautionary tale about how much power and influence we give to people we barely know, people we follow online, but who are not real people. They're avatars and people who are lying to us. And in this case, it went to the point of people who followed this beautiful influencer, and she was a beauty influencer, who followed her literally and moved to the US from Brazil to live with her and were exploited by her in the US. So that's a cautionary tale that it is about.
It's a Brazilian influencer, and she developed this huge online persona. And her posts would go from anything about witchcraft to like alien baths, some really intense things. But she grew such a following, and then she had people that actually she was able to kind of control or kind of enslave to a degree. What is that pipeline for you? Like when people get their trust from you based on an avatar or an internet persona, in your opinion, why do you think people will give up so much control to somebody like this?
I do think the internet is a game of deceive. I think everyone's lying on the internet, especially on social media, and we tend to believe that we're closer to the people we follow than we actually are. That's called a parasocial relation. And I guess that if you use it to deceive people and exploit people, that might be used to that as well. And that's what Kat did. She used the power of parasocial relations to exploit people who thought knew her but didn't know her at all. So they were lured by her promises and lured by her beauty and her fame, and ended up being pretty much enslaved by her.
Yeah, this starts with, I believe, one of the ladies that had gone missing, Patty, launched an internet campaign to find her friend Desiree, and this is where this kind of all started. What was your entrance point to this story? When did you find out about it, and how did it end up fascinating you to want to report on this?
Funny thing is, the first time I saw Cat Stories, I do recall seeing her Instagram page, her Instagram profile, and I went like, okay, another one of those wellness, hippie kind of guru vibe. Been there, done that, not interested. But then a couple of months later, I started reading some people talking on Twitter about how some of her followers were disappearing and she might be trafficking those followers, which sounded very unlikely and very ludicrous at first. But then when I saw that these people's families and friends were also reporting that they had disappeared, something switched in my mind. I was like, this might be a good story. This might be remarkable and might be something that I can dive into.
Yeah, it definitely was something you could dive into, and you did. But when you're in the midst of like researching this, how hard is it to remain unbiased or to kind of like follow where the actual facts lead? Because there are so many, when you're talking about witchcraft or putting spells on people, we're dealing with some really intense topics that lead to the trafficking.
I think that we have to respect each other's beliefs, no matter which those beliefs are. So if I'm investigating, as I have investigated, stories of religious cults or religious sects, I would never double question. I would never question someone's beliefs. I would question their actions and how they use those beliefs to manipulate people. And so that's my take on Kat's story. I'm not questioning if her witchcraft was real, if she was able to talk to God and read people's minds as she claimed she was able to, or talk to aliens, but what has she done with those self-proclaimed superpowers? So I'll never delve into the superpowers and question if they were real or not. It's not up to me. The same with religious beliefs, but what one does with the power that is given by his or her followers, and in her case, her followers.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, power, that word power keeps coming back and what you choose to do with power. And also just the cult of celebrity. I mean, it's brought up multiple times in the podcast that, she was once photographed with Leonardo DiCaprio or she potentially dated DiCaprio. And that kind of cachet that DiCaprio name gives, you're more willing to give your trust to somebody because they might be affiliated with somebody famous. And I find that the cult of celebrity a cult in its own right.
I do tend to agree with you, and there's an extra layer, there's an extra level to it, which is she had made it in America, which is something very sought of by us Brazilians. So poor Brazilian women like her saw herself succeeding in America and achieving things, and having her picture on a billboard on Sunset Boulevard and dating Leonardo DiCaprio and posing with a Ferrari. So she represented someone who had made it in America, which is something very big for the Brazilian psyche. Many people dream of going to the US to make money, and she had achieved that. So, besides being a celebrity and being famous and hanging around with famous people, she also represented the personification of the American dream for many
Yes.
Brazilians.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure Brazilians were proud of her to a degree.
Yep.
You mentioned that she was a shy Brazilian child, and then she went to become a model, and she had success in Hollywood, gaining 1 million followers, which not many people do. And then what you choose to do with that, we saw. Where do you think somebody like Desiree? What do you think? I mean, how would you, Desiree? What do you think she thought of Kat that got her so entrenched in what Kat was bringing to the table?
I do believe that Desiree saw herself as a younger sister to Kat. At first, she was a follower and she was interested in the new wave material, new wave content that Kat was creating. But after a while, they've gotten closer. She started counseling with Kat. She was paying Kat for consultations. And eventually, they grew so close that Desiree considered her a mentor, so to say. So when Kat invites her to move to Texas and live together, Kat Torres herself claims that she's sick and she's in a bad place and she needs help. So Desiree didn't move to the US in search of money or the American dream. She moved to the US to help someone she admired, but still had never seen. It was the first
Yeah.
time they in person was when Desiree moves into her house in the suburb of Texas.
I mean, that's why, yeah, she moved to Texas, starts living with her. And, we see more kind of psychological control is gained over Desiree, and she's able to suggest things or like, get over the fear of your body and sell your body or strip tea or, be a stripper. There are all of these things suggested where she is then getting money from Desiree doing these things. And to me, that's like, I'm like, I could understand being really influenced by somebody. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to understand how you would let it get more intense and more intense, but these things happen every day.
They sure do. And that's what I think it's peculiar to this case and this story. It's one of the first times I see this happening online. I mean, a whole ring of exploitation that doesn't need a headquarter. It's a cult without a headquarter. It's a cult whose headquarters is an Instagram profile. That is something very unique and very to 2025.
Yeah, I know. And by the way, you guys, there's 6 episodes. I mean, you can binge these, and with Wondery Plus, you can actually binge them without even commercials. But then they have bonus episodes as well, because it does kind of take you to the story to where she does get arrested, and I believe she is sentenced to 8 years. Have you had any sort of contact with Kat, or is she aware of the show that you have made?
I sure did. She's very aware of the show, both of the Brazilian version, which was released 2 years ago, and she's also aware of the American version that is called Don't Cross Cat. I keep close touch with her family, with her sister, with some of her closer friends, with her lawyers. She changes lawyers quite a bit. She's quite aware and she's not against it. She's not against people telling her story, but she doesn't feel she's in a place to speak right now, but she's well aware. And I think there's a little flattery as well. I think she's a little flattered that people are telling her story.
Even if it's a story that sometimes doesn't make her look the best, there's still an excitement level in there for her.
I, I guess that's the internet, that's social media, right? As long as people are interested in you, might they be haters, might they be lovers, they're talking about you, you're relevant. That's relevance.
Isn't that crazy? It did. I don't. It didn't used to be like this. If people, you usually want people to say great things about you, and now it's just at least they're talking about me, and that's even scarier in some way. And I was just wondering, like, does Kat have a relationship, or are you aware of with people like Desiree or the people that we meet through the podcast? You know, is there a no contact policy, or are they still in any form of communication?
I mean, she still keeps in touch with a couple of followers who write her letters, like actual pen and paper letters, physical letters, because there's no such a thing as telephones in Brazilian federal prisons. They're forbidden. So there's no phone calls in
Oh,
Brazilian federal prisons. So she communicates via letters, through letters, but not with the young women who accused her of those crimes. No, she
good.
got strength from them, and she also claims that she's never going back to the internet because the internet is for it's for idiots. That those are her words that she wrote me in a letter. The internet is for teenagers to dance and for idiots to spend their time. So she says she's done with the internet. She's
Well, listen, I mean,
over it.
I don't fully disagree with her, but I mean, you know, that's very interesting to hear. You reported on so many things. You know, you've had this like really esteemed career, and I imagine each project that you do, you learn something from. Is there something about this story which you have now worked on for years and years? Is there any way this story has changed you?
It sure did. I guess I'm somewhat more skeptical towards social media than when I started. So much more skeptical. I do not buy anything that I see on social media anymore. I'm really, I don't know. I wouldn't say disheartened, but I've lost it. I've lost all fascination I had with social media, and I even had the ability of believing in things I see online. I tend to double think and double question everything I see online. So do not believe what you see on social media.
No, I
I
love.
guess
I mean, you start the show saying like, "Listen, I have over 300,000 Instagram followers, and you got paid what was it like $10,000 to hold up something in an Instagram post
that,
because it
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's very alluring social media. You're like, wow, this is all for free. And a lot of people don't understand what it's doing to our minds and how it can manipulate. And I think this is such an interesting story that takes it far past, you know, I guess the norm. But at the same time, we are getting manipulated every day through social media and through these personas. And we see Kat now, she's in jail. She's behind bars. This is not a story of aspiration.
yeah, not at all. We should not aspire to be like her. Not at all. I wouldn't say
Um,
so.
You've already done this story, obviously, and you're in Brazil right now, correct?
Sure am. Sao Paulo.
Is it interesting to see that this story is obviously universal, that people are really getting into this story over here in the States? You already did this in Sao Paulo, but you know, is this kind of just show that like these, even in these bizarre stories, there are so many commonalities across the world?
I guess that's one of the positive side effects of social media and globalization. I mean, it's the same here. I mean, a young person from Ohio will have the same or similar aspirations to a young person from Sao Paulo, and would consume similar content and will think somewhat the same. And so I do believe there's an aspect that makes stores universal like that, because everyone wants to be famous nowadays, online famous. I mean, everyone wants to get rich doing advertising online. Everyone wants to make it easy. So that's what makes such a story somewhat universal and somewhat relatable to people who are not necessarily in Brazil or not necessarily were following cat stories.
Yeah. Did you meet any resistance in your research or the telling of this story? Was there anybody that didn't want to speak with you, or kind of doors that were shut on you, that like avenues that you wanted to explore that you couldn't?
There are a few young women who still believe in Cat, and her loyal followers were not willing to talk to me. Even her family was willing to talk to me. Even herself was willing to exchange letters with me. But the people who still follow Cat Source and still believe in her and her superpowers were the ones who were not willing to even reply my messages. So that was an avenue I wanted to have followed and wasn't able to.
Yeah. I mean, I know this is kind of a little of the trend now, but when I'm listening to this, I'm like, well, Chico's got to be working on a documentary about this, obviously. This is obviously going to be a TV docu-series. Are you able to share? Because I would imagine this has been presented to you many times at this point, and would this be something you're interested in?
I mean, sure, it would give a hell of a doc.
It
It
would.
would be such a good adaptation. But since this has also happened to previous podcasts of mine, I'm the person who says I like podcasting. I like investigating stuff by myself. So if the moment comes to have an adaptation of it, I'm all for it. And I do trust people who know how to make it better than I do. So I am the person who will say, go ahead and you do that. But I'm not the one to be working on it. I want to be on the street investigating a new case all by myself. That's what I was born for. But I'm all up for it. And I do think it would give such a good docu series or even a
Yeah.
fictional series based on a case. I mean, we've seen the really good one on Netflix now, Apple Cider Vinegar, which
Oh, yeah.
bears so many similarities and it's so interesting and so well executed.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that the entire time I'm listening, but to your point, I fell in love with podcasting years and years ago, and I find this such a magical forum, even for what I do. But it's got to be such like, can you talk about your appreciation for podcasting and where that love started?
Sure. I mean, I owe my whole career to podcasting. Basically, I've worked in a big newsroom in Brazil, to biggest newspaper in Latin America for 10 years, felt for it São Paulo. But I was just like a John Doe, like writing stories. Fewer and fewer people would read, and so I decided to write a long story in an audio format because I've always been obsessed with audio. I like listening. I think the voice reaches certain places in the brain that the text written word would not reach. So I went there and I started podcasting independently all by myself. And yeah, I've gotten like 5 million listeners with one of my narrative podcasts per episode. So I made it through podcasting and being myself and being quirky and having my own voice. And I don't mean only my like regular physical voice. I mean the way I
No.
write, the way I speak, the way I think, which is always a little clumsy. It's not a professional investigation. Of course I'm a professional and I'm trained, but I'm also confused and I'm also autistic and I'm also very hesitant and sometimes funny because I make mistakes. So I was able to be myself in public through podcasting, and I was able to achieve everything. The place I own right now and I'm living thanks to podcasting. That's why I'm so grateful to it. And also the contact with the audience is insane. I mean, the sheer amount of messages I exchange with the listeners is just it fills my day with joy. It's so it's the best job there
It's
is.
over. You know, it is overwhelming. And to your point, I mean, first off, you do have an insanely amazing voice. Your physical voice is so pleasing to listen to. But I know exactly what you're talking about in the terms of like, you know, I think the audience really senses who you are and we're willing to go on journeys with you because then I started looking you up after this one and I was like, I've got to listen to the other things that he's done. And I was like, okay, these are in not my language, but I got it. I was like, wow, I'm a new fan of yours now from listening to this story. And I was just wondering how your brain works. Do you always have three or four different podcast ideas or avenues that you're exploring? And when do you know something is ripe to actually make into a narrative podcast?
I would say like 7 or 8 different possible stories, different avenues I might cross or might not cross. And I do think there's a moment in which you realize that story is worth being told, and it's also possible to tell the story. Because sometimes you have a great story, but you're not getting anyone to talk to you, and you're not getting uh, footage from things that happened in the past. And so we do have to follow each glimpse of story that crosses our path. So out of every 10 stories I start investigating, I should have one podcast in like 1 or 2 years. It takes a while.
Wow. Is there, I mean, do you have your great white whale? Like one day I hope to do this story, but it's so big. It's so big that I don't think I possibly could do this for another 10 years.
I tend to think I like the smaller stories. So I wouldn't say it's a big white whale. I would say it's a tiny dolphin. It's a baby dolphin, I would say. I tend to like stories that are very relatable and like regular people. So I've written about my neighbor who lived in an abandoned mansion, and she was wanted by the FBI because she had enslaved a person in the US. That was my biggest hit. Those are always themes that ring close to home. They're never like somewhere in Washington and the
No, it's
hidden in
something
the.
personal. Yeah.
It's really, yeah. So I'm writing about my life and the people who cross my life. So I don't think that I was never unable to tell a story due to its importance or relevance or size. I'm unable to tell a story because people don't want their story to be told, and that's really we have to respect that. But that's a little disheartening. So I do
Yeah.
have a story of a mother who's looking for her body son for 10 years now to bury. He has been killed in a horrendous situation, and his body was never found. His remains were never found, and she used her last decade to look for her son's remains. And that's a beautiful story. I might not never be able to tell. It rings like a Greek tragedy, but eventually she told me, "I don't want this published, so it will never be published." Maybe that's my big white way.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to have that experience, and you get to know that story. I have a couple more questions for you, and I know this. I mean, going back to when you were young, what were the things that influenced you? I mean, podcasting is still relatively new, obviously, but when you were young, like, what stories or storytellers? What were the things that really like blew your mind away?
I think that bad radio in Brazil, bad radio shows were definitely something, and they were so tacky and bad and so tongue in cheek. They were definitely something. But when I started growing up and went to college, and I would say things like Truman Capote. Truman Capote was definitely a big influence on my work, something very admirable. We also have great Brazilian authors who also inspired me so much. And Serial, of course, the biggest
Yeah.
narrative podcast there ever was. It changed my mind when I listened to it. I was living in the US and I was like, gee, I need to do that. I need to do something close to this. So, yeah.
Isn't it wild that you actually are doing something like this right now? I mean, like you listen to something like Serial, and here we are 12, 13 years later, and you're doing this. There, as you spoke about earlier, there is such a fascination with the public and gurus and spiritual influencers. And what do you think that says about society at large right now in this moment?
I think everyone's looking for an easy answer, and there's no such a thing. And that's what gurus stand for, easy answers. They will give you a ticket to get your money, to get your health, to get the body you aim for, the body you always dream. And there's no such a thing. It's an illusion. There's no easy way out. There's not an easy way to do anything, or else people would have done it. But we still tend to believe, and that's why we like so much gurus and come artists and easy answers. There's no easy answer in life. There's no easy solution. But we
Yeah.
still buy people who say are selling snake oils to us. We're still buying it and drinking it all up.
Yeah, I mean, and I kept thinking, listening to this, it's all about this kind of, to your point, we want to be loved, we want to be accepted, we want to be cool, and all of these things. We're looking to be told what to do, and that is why we will give up our power so easily. And then there's the people that just want to grab power and take power. I don't know, but guys, I'm doing a bad job explaining this, but 6 episodes of this podcast is going to do a great job for you. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to burn through these episodes, and then you're probably going to want to get Wondery Plus so you can listen to the 2 other episodes that are there because it continues on the story. But will there be any sort of revisiting of this? I mean, in like 5 years from now, are we at the end of this story, or are we just blossoming 10 more stories from this one?
I do believe there will be blossoming more stories out of this, especially that Kat has served a lot of time already. She has served 2 years, and her sentence is 8 years in Brazil. If you behave well, you get a third of your sentence. So, I mean, she might be released in a year or so. And I would bet that from the moment she's released, she will come back stronger and she will be way more famous, and people will have a larger interest in her, and she will be bigger on social media. So I do believe there's a second part to this story, which is, okay, now we've made her really famous, and I include myself in this. What's going to happen next? What's going to happen when she's free and when she has social media available in the palm of her hand? What will she do with it?
Yeah, how will she monetize? How will she? I mean, I hate that word monetize, but so even in the dealings with her family or with her, there's no kind of recognition of, yeah, I went down a really dark path and I did a lot of wrong things.
Nope. It's pure denying, pure denial. She doesn't even recognizing that her followers live with her in Texas. She denies it. And we're like, yeah, we have court material, we have evidence from the Texan police, we have the reports of these women, we have thousands of videos, we have pictures. And she was like, nope, they never lived with me.
You have the escort websites. You have you have every piece of information. By the way, that's why you got to listen to the show for all the details, you guys. But I mean, by the way, what you just said, it's spoken like a true influencer. I mean, she's truly, never admit you're wrong, never admit your defeats. And that really scares me. And it's something I'm going to be thinking about tonight, is that she will probably be stronger and more popular when she gets out. So that will be very interesting. Well, you have a new fan in me, and I think you're going to have a lot of new fans after people listen to this. The podcast is called Guru Don't Cross Cat. I'll put it on all the show notes so you can go subscribe. Wondery, always doing an excellent job. But sir, really fantastic work, and I can't wait to follow your career from this point, because I think you're amazing. Thanks, man.
Thanks so much for having me, and I'm so sorry about being late.
That's the joy of podcasting. It's the joy of You had a weird day. I had a weird day. It's all good.
It's been a weird day. You have no idea. I'm so sorry about that.
Hopefully we'll do a podcast on your weird day one day. But until then, go listen to this show, folks.